Why do we give a shit what these crazy utopians say and what they want? Why does government listen to these people? Why are they seemingly running a lot of the major institutions, the education system? Why do we give them the opportunity to do this as a society?
Right. Well, I think there's sort of so then you kind of go, okay, so let's assume that there's only really a radical minority, a radical left minority that wants to truly tear down the institutions, which I believe and agree with. If you take surveys, public opinion surveys, and you were asked that question, it would be a very small minority. I mean, maybe 5%, maybe more now. Most people, in fact, I did poll people, by the way. I did surveys of the public. Vast majority of people are on board with the kind of program that I'm describing, 70 to 80% majority. So then what's going on? Well, look, I mean, obviously a big part of this is just appealing to the heartstrings, and that's involved misinformation. So the radical left, which knows very well that the people on the street are addicted to hard drugs, I don't know if they are explicit about it, but they're using them to advocate for housing, for subsidized housing. They kind of wave away the addiction as a result of poverty rather than the cause of it. And then they kind of then just try to trick everybody, and it's kind of like, some of them are not even consciously doing it, but it's kind of like, oh, don't you care about this poor person? Don't we just want to help them? It's just that, it's simple. And most people don't think about this stuff. And it's just at the level of charity. And so it's sort of masking a much more radical agenda as charity. And then charity appeals to basically everybody. I mean, we probably
it's
have
what I call weaponized empathy, Michael. Weaponized empathy. That's what it is.
I call it pathological altruism.
It's just as good.
But there's definitely, and there's something at its worst, it's something almost sociopathic about it. There's something, there's dark, what we call the dark triad, which is sociopathy, narcissism, and Machiavellianism on the part of the real leaders of this movement that really are doing this stuff to manipulate people. And then I think so that's kind of your average liberal type person. Then there's conservatives who I think have had some part of this correct, which is that you can't just give things to people without asking for anything in return. That's something that I think the political right has been saying for decades. So then the question is, why hasn't that succeeded politically? And in fact, why has it in some ways lost power over the last 30 years? And to some extent, I think there's reasons that have nothing to do with the political right. Just we're all much more coddled and spoiled and liberal and privileged, and there's just not a lot of sympathy for the more stoic, harder approach to life. I think another part of it, though, is that the right has been unwilling to talk about the need for things like universal psychiatric care, and even has just been uncomfortable with psychology and psychiatry in general. I'm not totally sure I got to the bottom of it, but when you look at the deinstitutionalization of the psychiatric hospitals, both in Britain and the United States, it's being pushed by the radical left. But the kind of liberals then were like, yeah, it's got to be right because everyone's intentions are good. And then conservatives kind of went along with it for cost-saving measures and also out of discomfort with psychiatry. Now, I think that's then changed in the Netherlands. René, my character from the Netherlands, and his wife, Dilan, who, by the way, could be prime minister one day. She's a very successful politician. They are part of a center-right political party that actually formed in part in backlash to the open street, the open drug scenes in Amsterdam in the late 80s and early 1990s. So I guess I would say I have part of the reason I'm so obsessed with the Netherlands, because I also love them on the environment and energy. They live below sea level and prove that sea level rise is not the end of the world. Part of the reason I love the Dutch so much is I do think they're a bit ahead of us. And so my hope is that there would be some sort of center right, although I think it could possibly sit on the center left, though maybe more difficultly, center right political formation that would have majority power and governing power in the United States and other Western countries, because the Dutch have shown that sort of political formation is not only viable, but then can actually fix the problem.
Michael, before we move on to the drugs, the last question I want to ask you is this.